I have this path, right? I've done all the things right. I've worked so hard. I've had all these internships. I get to New York. I have the job. It's so cool and so fun. And then you're just crushed. This thing I've spent, no joke, 5 years, 6 years building towards is not viable.
Hi, this is Dr. Saldivar with another episode of the Way to College podcast. And it's funny. When I created this podcast, it was all about understanding and sharing people's journeys because I think the idea that we all have this linear path or that one's journey professionally, educationally, it should be this linear straight line. It isn't, it often isn't the case. And so I'm really excited because today's guest is doing work around this. And so here we are. I think we're talking to the same audiences, talking about similar things, and I'm really eager to jump into her story. But as always, I'd like to give her the opportunity to introduce herself to our listeners and our viewers out there. So, Kate, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Kate Crane. I live in Austin, Texas, and I am a career coach and co-founder, not co-founder, I'm the only founder of Direction Over Perfection. I help students and young adults understand that your careers are not linear. They are jungle gyms, not ladders, and that the best thing forward is momentum, and there is no such thing as a perfect decision.
Oh, I love that. Particularly, it's a welcome, Kate, but I loved the characterizing it as a jungle gym. I don't know about you, but as a kid, I loved the jungle gym. Kind of like you could go in all sorts of different directions, and there was like maybe there was a cargo net one area. So I love that. Thank you, Kate. Welcome to the Way to College podcast. I always begin the podcast with the same question, and my question for you is: if you had to identify a starting point for your educational journey, where would that starting point be?
Oh, that's a great question. Do you want me to genuinely answer it as like the full educational journey, or do you want me to start it as like the higher educational journey?
I think, what is the first thing that came to mind when I asked you that?
Kindergarten.
Tell me about kindergarten.
I went to this lovely school in Fort Worth where I grew up, Fort Worth Country Day. My parents went there. My sister and I went there, and it is a very difficult, very challenging, but like whole person focused college prep school. So I can remember kindergarten. You say, where does your education start? I can remember driving to school the first day with my mom and her asking me, do I want to learn French or Spanish, which is a whole story in its own right. But I fully accredit the beginning of my education, the foundation of my education with Country Day. It was really, really tough. But when I went to UT Austin for college, I walked in as a sophomore because I had such aggressive college prep education through APs and advanced, like, and then testing out of things and uh, not GMAT, SAT scores.
Yeah.
Um, so it truly was a college prep school in the most like basis of definitions.
Before we jumped on, we were talking about our work, and you said you knew what you were going to do at 18. Kate, I've got to admit, I've interviewed over 200 people now, and I've yet to to find one that said that as a kindergartner, they were having a conversation with mom or with either one of their parents about, well, what language do you want to learn? And even the idea of college, the idea, because clearly you're going to go to country day, you're going to go to college, right? For a lot of my guests, college maybe came later down the road, right? When they
Mhm.
could maybe see it, it was a little clearer. There were expectations conveyed to them. But it sounds like for you, those expectations came very early.
They did. They did. My, and we also talked about this a little bit before. Um, my great great grandfather great great worked on the railroad and in the 1880s in Texas. And he went to UT and got a degree in civil engineering and then was like an interim professor. He was a professor and then an interim dean at UT in the engineering school. And so I'm blessed to be a multi-generational Texan, and I'm blessed to have this, history of higher ed. And not everybody in my family has gone to UT, but my direct line, everyone's gone to UT. So there's that. Um, but also, my sister, my mother, and I were all College of Fine Art graduates. So we are very strong workers, all have strong, big careers. But our rule was, or the rule my grandfather gave my mom, and then she kind of loosely played on us was do whatever you want to do in college, major whatever you want, but your minor has to be business.
Wow.
Yeah. So my mother was a pianist. My mother majored in piano. She was studying to be a concert pianist, but she had a minor in business. And so when she graduated and said, "Oh, shoot, I don't want to spend my life rehearsing," um, she had one kind of like deviating career in the opera and development for a little bit, but she spent until very recently spent 40 years as a wealth manager at UBS. So yeah, different, super different. Um, so we had these not like mandated expectations, but really strong influences of what your career can look like.
You said that when you went to UT, you knew exactly what you wanted to do. What did you want to do?
I wanted to be an art advisor. I wanted to live in the intersection of art and art history and business. And that first country day, again, being incredible. I was introduced to art history as a sophomore in world history. And I said, that's cool. I love this. Creation of Adam, fascinating. And then I had the opportunity to take AP art history as a junior, which I did. And then I was like, I just want to do this forever. But I want to make money at it. So that was, I mean, because hey, I like nice things and nice things take money. And was very, not pushed on me, but I was just aware. And so this is what I found for myself. Um, so I did that. I did both. And I don't think there was really anyone else at UT. I can say at least in my graduating class in art history that was doing that. Everybody else was going to grad school to go be a curator.
For a lot of students, well, a lot of students have kind of this big idea of what it is that they want to do. And I think of immediately some very traditional, and I say traditional, just common. Um, um, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be this, 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 this. But like you said, nobody else was doing this kind of
Mhm.
work. And I think what gets lost in a lot of conversations for young people around helping them find a path and helping them identify maybe a major and then potential careers is sort of the in between, right? What are the things that we should be doing year to year? So, Kate, what is it that you did? If you knew exactly what you wanted to do, what is it that you needed to do year to year to make sure you got that job, that dream job that you were working towards? And
Mhm.
where did you get the information? Like who told you, oh, Kate, this is what you need to do?
That's a great question. And I'll say that I can say very like definitively now that I wanted to be an art advisor. That really, better said is that I wanted to have a career in the arts and I
Hmm.
wanted to make money doing it. And over the course of many years, many conversations, I kind of found my way to this art advisor concept. Um, I was also blessed to be in Fort Worth, that while it is known as Cowtown, also has a really rich art, performing art, and visual art community. both in the museums, and then the people. Out of my graduating class of 92, I think we have two working artists. I have two other good friends who are either art advisors or work at museums. Like there were, and then a musician and an actor. Like that's a really high percentage.
Mm,
Um, I think, my own perspective. Um, how did I come to that specific path? There, because of this rich art community, I had conversations. And it was friends of this like larger community. Like, can I talk to the director of the Modern? Can I talk to someone at the Kimball? And then once I was at UT, can I like, kind of like talked my way into interning at the Blanton? And then from my one of my classes, I loved the professor in three-dimensional art, and I talked my way into interning at the Visual Arts Center because she was the director. Um, and then I had a family friend who was an art collector, and I was really just like trying to get my way to New York to go experience New York in a working fashion. And she asked her art dealer, to let me hang out for a summer, and that's what I did. And I'm also very fortunate to be able to afford to do an unpaid internship. But that first summer I had two jobs. I worked 6 days a week, unpaid, but I wanted to experience everything that I could.
yeah.
Um, so through that, I learned I love the galleries. I love the relationship between the gallerist and their artists. Um, I learned that museums are not for me. It's just like they don't need business strategists, which is like kind of where how I define like the middle part of my career.
Hmm.
I don't want to ask people for money. I don't want to fundraise, and I'm really not a curator. But I think I feel very strongly that, like, especially when you're building your professional education alongside your academic education in college, that you should be open to experiences that you might not like, because you'll learn more, as much or more, from the things that you don't like than the things that you do.
Mm. So a couple of things that really stand out to me. One, thank you for that. But two is, I it sounds like I think it's safe to say that given you're the school and not UT necessarily, but Country Day, and just like, as you said, you're fortunate. You've got working artists that came out of your class and other folks involved in art. But it sounds like there was a nice maybe network that
Mm-hmm.
it was that allowed you to tap into, right? But I think for a lot of our listeners out there, what what really piqued my interest was when you said I talked my way into the Blanton. I talked my way into working at the Visual Arts Museum. And so just encouraging and reminding students that really taking ownership, taking responsibility, and sort of maybe stepping out of one's comfort zone and having these conversations and asking those questions is critical.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll say that going from Country Day, class
Hmm.
of 92, to UT Austin is jarring, right? Like I'm now one of 15,000, or well, maybe that's too high. Let's call it 10,000 in my freshman class. Yeah, there's no one guiding you anymore. It is entirely up to you to go figure out what classes you're going to take. How do you network your way into knowing the right professors? And, at that point, the internet was still relatively new. And so like there was like Pick a Prof was a website we could use. So you had to do it yourself. Because if you
Yeah.
weren't, like, I don't know where you're going. Um, and so being kind of shoved out of the nest, out of my little school into this giant school, also kind of built some of those skills.
I love that. The other thing that yeah, I didn't get to say, but when you said do the things that you don't enjoy, right? Doing work and sometimes we take on work not knowing whether we're going to enjoy it or not. But it sounds like whether we enjoy it or not, we can learn something, particularly from the work that we don't enjoy, and say, I
Yeah.
don't want to do this, right? So you graduate from UT. Here it is. You've had all of these incredible experiences. And so what came next for you?
So all the things, all the applications, all the internships, I got a job in New York at an art gallery, which, en route to quote unquote art advisor, I knew I wanted to do time in New York, build a network, yada, yada. I had this like such a clear path. So I talked my way in, I said, talk my way into, I applied to this job in New York and I got it at a tiny gallery, but it was in Chelsea, it was in the heat of the cool, um, in a warehouse building. It was wonderful. Um, but it was 2008 and I joined in June and I got laid off in December.
Oh,
Yeah. And then after that, um, I applied to 50 jobs. I got two interviews and I lost those jobs to people who had master's degrees who also had been laid off. And, little kid, I view myself as a kid at that point. 6 months experience doesn't hold a candle to a master's degree. And then I genuinely talked my way into working in a kitchen as a line cook. I was trying to decide. So let me take a step back a little bit. I have this path, right? I've done all the things right. I've worked so hard. I've had all these internships. I get to New York. I have the job. It's so cool and so fun. And then you're just crushed. This thing I've spent, no joke, 5 years, 6 years building towards is not viable. So I'm, not working, applying to things, I'm going to yoga, I'm cooking dinner for myself, I'm teaching myself how to cook, and I'm throwing dinner parties because I can't afford to go to restaurants. So um, that's what I like to do. And so I'm genuinely just trying to figure out what do I do with my life now that what I thought I was going to do is not possible. And so I was trying to decide if I wanted to go to culinary school or, as my parents were advising, maybe you should go get a finance degree to balance your art history degree and go to business school. Um, and so, longer story long, I have had a really good friends. I had a really good friend who was in culinary school, and her school requires that you work for 6 months before enrolling. So I thought, okay, that's a pretty good plan. Go try it before you commit. So I talked my way into working as a line cook at 1F by Land, 2F by Sea, which is this like iconic um, date night fine dining restaurant in the West Village.
okay. How does one with very limited cooking skills and no offense, of course I've had, but just based on what you've shared, right? How does one get a job as a line cook in a clearly at least a well-known restaurant?
Yeah, great question. So at that point, I think like those jobs were on like Craigslist, and so and there wasn't a lot of applicants, right? It wasn't like LinkedIn today where you had 200 applicants in 24 hours. It was like you're clicking through all the pages on Craigslist. There wasn't even like a search function. And so I like got to the link and I didn't live that far from it and I was like I'm just going to go check it out. So I'm like chatting with the executive chef and he's like, "Okay, you have a college degree. Why are you here?" I was like, I'm really interested, and I explained my theory around this, around culinary school, and that I wanted to work first. He said, "Okay, I don't know what you can do, but you're clearly not dumb, so I'm going to give you a trial day, which is like a standard operating procedure. You don't hire somebody, you give them a trial day. So, and I think the actual job was for prep cook. Prep cooks peel onions and garlic in the basement. So I was applying to be a prep cook. So I do my trial day, and they like put you on the line and you kind of shadow somebody and help out. And so I did an okay job shadowing. And also I had like called my friend in culinary school and I said, "What do I do?" And she said, "YouTube different knife cuts and just like practice on carrots." And so I did that the night before and then I went in and kind of like did it again in the kitchen. So I passed the trial day and then day one, I'm in the prep kitchen peeling garlic, no exaggeration. And somebody was sassy upstairs at 5:30 before as service is starting, and they fire him in on the spot, and they yell down the stairs into the basement and say, "Kate, come up. You're on the line today." And so I go up, and now I'm the garde manger. And the garde manger is like I think it was a Escoffier title, but I was making the cold appetizers and the salads and the amuse bouche. And I ended up, there's a small kitchen,
Yeah.
but I was like running that station for a couple months before I decided this wasn't for me. It was incredibly humbling, most humbling work experience of my entire life. So hard. Um, the kitchen was very clean. It
Hmm.
wasn't the druggy, rumors that you hear of restaurants. It was a very clean kitchen. Um, but, I was little white girl in the corner. Um, I and nobody knew I had a college degree. Nobody knew where I lived. I fibbed about all of that. But they let me hang out and be a line cook.
Wow. And so you did this for a few months.
I did. I did it for 3 months. The end of the 3 months, I was home for Easter. I think that tracks month wise, and I was spending time with my family. And my parents were like, "What do you think? Are you gonna do this?" I was like, "I don't know. This is hard, but I think I really want to. I think I want to own the kitchen. I don't want to work in the kitchen." And so I was still obsessed with the restaurant culture. And like fast forward in my resume, I worked at DoorDash and at OpenTable. But I decided I didn't want to work on the line, but I was barely interested in the restaurant industry. But I needed a better business foundation. And so I moved home and I moved in with my parents and I worked for my family's business and I applied to business school.
And the family business. What was the family business, or what is the family
That's it.
business?
Um, I'm giggling because my dad will probably listen to this, and we call him Secret Squirrel. He's in investments, and the family business is like a big amalgamation of some real estate, some cattle, some like public investments, like stock market stuff. And so I think I did a couple projects. I did a project on energy master limited partnership strategy in public markets. And then I worked on like the P&L for our cattle business. I was like low man on the totem pole, just like financial analyst doing grunt work.
But a lot of this work, I mean, you've got this art history background, you've got a business minor. Here you are, you've worked as a line cook. Jumping into the family business, was that a difficult transition for you, or was it just, I'd kind of been around the work, I was able to pick it up, and I was just kind of able to move into the work seamlessly? What was the transition like for you?
That's a great question. So I am a big proponent that everybody should be an executive assistant or work in a service role of some kind at some point in their career. And for me, when I was in the gallery, I was a gallery assistant. Um, at the time, the like pejorative term was a gallerina, but like I was like less than a sales assistant. But I think what I was good at was anticipating the needs of others and sitting with the gallerists that ran it, and help them anticipate the needs of what they needed next. And if that was a spreadsheet prepping to go to a art fair, yes. If it's installing things, yes. If it's listening to the client and pulling books and pulling pieces of art because I'm listening to the conversation, I know it's like that's what that meant. And so moving into the analyst role, yeah, there was learning curves, but I was already really comfortable in Excel and I was comfortable taking notes and thinking critically about things. And in art history, like while you, yes, learn art history is really a critical thinking degree around frameworks and training you to think about things from different perspectives. Um, there's a there's a if you once you get into it, you will find that there are a lot of management consultants that have art history degrees, but the management consulting firms don't recruit from art history departments. But it's because I mean I have like there's like 6 people I know, but from when I was a management consultant, um, that happened to have art history degrees that ended up in that path.
Wow. I love this because, and I'm sure you get this with your own work. when we jump into these conversations. And I love these little bits and pieces of information. This is kind of like taking a peek behind the curtain, right? And this is what's really going on. And this is, most of the folks doing this work are doing this or got this background. Because I think, I'm sure you've found this too. For a lot of us, there are a lot of assumptions that inform, right, the work that we think we want to do or the path we choose to do. Here, I think you've been fortunate. You've gotten to see behind the curtains in a lot of these positions. You've gotten to experience and said, I do want to do this. I don't want to do this. So one, thank you for sharing that with us.
Mhm.
You're working for your family's company. You go to business school, and you go to business school with the intent that you are going to do what? Because I know
I
Kate had
had
a plan.
no,
Oh,
I had no idea. And like, I'm like, Tina's not listening. She's still the dean at the MBA program, but like, I fooled Tina. Like, I think I told them that I had a very clear view that I wanted to get a degree in finance and I wanted to go probably back into the arts. And I really did pursue that. But as I, then was going back to the director of the Modern and I was going back to my old boss at the Blanton, it was really especially becoming clear then that like this is not a path for me. Um, I'm not a fundraiser. I'm not a curator. So I really did try to go back with a more traditional business background with finance. So I
mhm.
majored in finance. I specialized in finance, and because I wanted a very like rubber stamp on my resume of you have you have finance, and I'll say that like corporate finance and whatever I learned in that class around puts and calls and hedging like makes my brain bleed. But I do love a financial model and I love a P&L and I am like a nerd and I'm so happy in a spreadsheet. So I'm happy that like there really was a true affinity for that. Um, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I quickly discovered that management consulting is like a secondary MBA. And so I had a lot of friends that were going through the interview process for internships through on-campus recruiting. I didn't get an internship in management consulting. I wasn't good enough. Um, I wasn't interviewing well enough. I was also really young for business school. I went 2 years out and of undergrad, and that at that point the average was 6. So I think those averages have changed over time.
Mhm.
But I was really young. And like, I think there was one person younger than me. But then when I graduated, I did go into management consulting with a strategy group.
How long did you do that work?
I call it 5 years. I was with Capgemini for 2.5, almost 3. But I went client side. So I was staffed at an oil and gas company, and then I got the promotion from senior consultant to managing consultant. I completely burned out pushing myself through that promotion. And my client said, "Hey, we're phasing out this like long-term project. We'd love for you to stay." And they let me name my price and write my job description. So I stayed. And had a lot of advice not to do that. I had a lot of advice that leaving management consulting was going to be like stepping off the escalator in terms of like the learning curve.
Yeah.
They weren't wrong, but it was the right decision for me at the time. I I think I got in the promotion. I was managing people for the first time. I'd helped start the young professional chapter for Texas Parks and Wildlife in Houston, and I was loved, but I was like, I didn't have time for that, and I, you know, bought a house by myself. I had no business doing that. I was just like completely. I just needed a break, and so that was a good break. It was a completely illogical career move, but it was the thing that, as a whole person, like that's what I needed to do.
For folks listening, So if I'm thinking our college age listeners out there, what exactly is management consulting, Kate?
It's a really silly concept. Um, it's a completely yeah. So I'm going to tell you the definition, and then I'm going to tell you what it actually is. The high level theory is that executive teams will hire people, quote unquote, air quotes, that they think are smarter than them to help make decisions. And that's like McKinsey and Company. I'm going to hire McKinsey to help me figure out what is the right next direction for my company. And then there's a lot of different types of management consulting. The other end of that spectrum is I need to go implement a new system. I don't have enough arms and legs and expertise to implement that new system. Um, and there's a lot of value to that. It's just different. And I was Capgemini was somewhere in the middle, closer to the strategy side of like we need to do something and we want someone to give us advice and also figure out how to put it into action. What's silly is that then you have 23-year-olds that you're advice like I wasn't 23, but we did have 23-year-olds. I mean, I think I was 26. Like, but you're hiring somebody in their 20s to like give you I'm giving like these men in their 60s that are like 30-year Exxon veterans advice. What? That's what's silly. And that's like the whole industry. I mean, anyone that's been in management consulting will say it's silly and like, but it's billable and it's great and it's a really good place. It's a really good place to learn, work really, really hard, learn how to develop a client, how to do good work, learn how to drop in somewhere new because the client thinks that they're hiring somebody that is an expert at digital transformation or XYZ system or process improvement, but like I didn't know any of that, but I figured it out and I did good work. But like, if you were hiring me, you were hiring a full-time person, you wouldn't have hired my resume to go do those things. But I was a management consultant. It's really silly.
Well, I mean, good for you. Good on you that you were able to do that work. And as you said, you stepped into the role and you were able to do good work. When did you realize this wasn't for you?
Okay, so for I'll answer that before your college kids. I don't want anyone to take away that they shouldn't go that industry.
Uh-huh.
If you can study how to the interview process for management consulting is very specific. So case interview process. You actually have to learn the process to even be able to have a chance at answering the case correctly. So if you can learn the thing and get past the interviews, it is an incredible, it is an incredible work opportunity. It is really hard. You will work long hours and you'll probably travel a lot, to fun and not fun places. And the average life of a traveling consultant is 2 years because the life is so hard. Mm-hmm. Only 2 years. Um, but once you have that on your resume, people know you can hang and you can do a lot of other hard things. So, and I think it's like you kind of have to be in the know because if you're not in the business school at UT, you kind of don't know
Yeah.
that this is an option.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so I can answer the next question, but um, moving on from Capgemini or moving on from the oil and gas company.
Uh, Cap Gemini.
Yeah, I was burning out, and they gave me this like offer I couldn't refuse, because they said like tell me the offer that you would take, and so I gave them a number that I thought they would say no to, and then they didn't, and I know now that I should have asked for more money, but at the time it was like crazy dollars, and so it was great, and I worked fewer hours and I made more money, but I also learned a lot less over the next 2 years. But it was a good break.
I like how you describe it as a break. Making more money, working fewer hours as a good break. Wow. Okay. This work.
It's for
This work. When?
I'll say that
Uh-huh.
it's it's a good example of like work hard and you'll get lucky. I started to say I was blessed to have the opportunity, and I am blessed. I'm blessed in many, many ways, but I was given the opportunity because I had been busting my ass, and they knew that. and that I had really become like, so I was whatever, I was a operations management consultant at the time. And I was helping this like effectively a startup kind of stand up their operations and figure things out that like they didn't know how to figure out. And so when I wrote my job description, I became the chief of staff to the COO and the CTO. And so I wrote myself a JD that I could go learn from them. But in those 2 years, I worked for a gentleman that was like kind of lent to this as like a joint venture. I had one boss from Exxon and one boss from Chevron. And I learned that because I was not an engineer, there was a very real glass ceiling for me in in oil and gas. And it had nothing to do with my gender. It was because I wasn't an engineer. And so my time was limited there, at least in my own, you know, business path.
Yeah. Do you think, because I mean, I think this is common. People find their way into work, work their way into work,
Mhm.
realize that my time is limited here, or there is a glass ceiling and I can't, that I'm not going to be able to exceed, but I'm going to hold on to this job. I'm going to fight tooth and nail for this job. Did that
Mhm.
thought into your mind?
Oh, I could have stayed there as long as I wanted to. I don't think that I was definitely not pushed out. So back to this whole person concept, what was also happening in my life in that started dating this guy and we're fast forward, we're married now, but this guy had never lived outside of Texas and he was really fun. He liked to travel. And he said, hey, we've been dating for like 4 months. He said, hey, I think I need to leave Texas and go experience something else. And I was like, that's a great idea. You should do that. And he said, I think I'm going to go to Denver. And do you want to come with me? And I said, yes. I mean, like the decision was a lot more complicated than that, but that was the essence of it.
Yeah.
So I think we were dating for 6 months, and I said, I think let's do this. And at essentially a year of us dating, we moved to Denver, and I quit my job. He moved with his job to go start their Denver office, and um, we got engaged like 2 months later. But I was like, this is a blessing. I need to pick a new word. But I was excited for him to want to go experience new things, just like I had experienced New York and come back. He wanted to go experience Colorado, and I said, I love Colorado. Let's go, and we'll figure it out. It'll be an experiment. We'll 2 years. It'll be fine. We were there for 6 years. Um, but if I had not taken that leap and I had not been so intentional in choosing him and also my career, I would never have found DoorDash. So I took that opportunity to leave oil and gas and to go back to what is it that I love? What do I want to do? Now I had a firmer understanding that I was good at operations. I was good at finance, although I'm like not an accountant, so I wasn't like an FP&A person. Um, and I wanted to find my way back to food and to restaurants. So I was interviewing at CPG companies. I was interviewing at basically just CPG actually. There's a lot of CPG in Denver, and particularly natural foods, which I'm also excited, like a fan of. And DoorDash, but DoorDash was like distant third, distant, very small company, totally losing to Uber, and they were hiring their first kind of like driver dasher person in for the Denver office, and I got the job and thought, I'm gonna do operations for a bit at this like tech company, and how exciting, we'll see where it goes. But that was 2017, and then DoorDash like took off.
How long did you work with DoorDash?
5 years. Um, so I stayed. I was in the dasher side of the business for the first year, which at that point was like very manual, acquiring dashers, onboarding dashers, determining how many dashers we need, and then like when you needed them to show up, like in that part of town on a set Friday night, I was like physically texting them like extra money here, here, here. It was like playing a video game. It was like all on computer, but now all that's automated. It was not automated back then. And then the second year, I talked my way over to the merchant side of the business, which was where I really wanted to be, like actually working with restaurants. And I was on DoorDash Drive, which is now called Platform Services. It's the white label business. So if you order something from the Chipotle app for delivery,
Hmm.
it's actually a DoorDash driver. And in summer of 2018, they were like just starting that business. They've been doing catering, but they hadn't been doing small orders. And so I joined the small order team. And at the end of my 3 years on that team, um, we did. So I effectively had run US restaurants for that 3 years. There were points where I had Canada and points where I had Australia and points where I had the pizza business and the catering business. And um, but because startup things change. But most consistently was U.S. restaurants, and our team. When I joined the team, the whole team did $9 million annualized revenue in the first quarter, and when I left that team, my team did over 500 million
Oh my
in
gosh.
annualized revenue. It was DoorDash, COVID, like there were it was IPO. Like I left that team in 2021. We went through the IPO in 2020. It was crazy. Um, and then at the end of middle of 2021, I had my first daughter. And I decided I don't think I can like run a business line and be a mom, which is actually like not true. But at the time, I was very worried about that. So I went over to corporate development, doing M&A strategy for that like new team, well, September of 21.
What came next?
A dear friend from DoorDash from the Drive team had gone over to this company called Flock Safety, and he asked me to come be his first hire. So I went over to stand up strategy and operations at Flock. Strategy and operations is like it's at DoorDash, to like carry these metaphors, it's effectively like an internal consulting team. And you're not like doing consulting projects, but first, no one in 2017 and before, like no one comes from delivery. There, you're probably not hiring from Uber, although we did hire some people from Uber. This is like tacky, but we didn't want to hire anybody from Grubhub. So who else do you hire? You hire management consultants. You hire people that have never that know how to do things they don't know how to do, how to go figure it out. So like I'm genuinely, we hired bankers and management consultants because those two skill sets know how to not know anything and go figure it out and then get it done. And that is this like strategy and operations concept, using data to make decisions. Like when I was running US restaurants, my job was to like make money. I say this all the time on like new teams, and they're like, that sounds so silly. And I'm like, it's not. How do you make money? I need to do deliveries and I need to do them profitably. How do I do deliveries? I need to have more stores and I need to have more orders per store. And how do I get more stores? I like go have a sales pipeline. I mean, convert the pipeline. But like, I just like made that all up. Like you just think critically about how to do things. So I was hired to go do that at Flock Safety. But at Flock, that meant uh, before you use data to make decisions, we had to build a data team. Um, I inherited a data team. They're lovely. Many of them are still there. But we converted it from like a team that built dashboards into a team that built data architecture and does data science. Um, and yeah, Block Safety uses data to solve crimes. That's essentially what they do. It's not the words they use, but it's automated license plate reading cameras so that you can use objective data points to go find stolen vehicles and find missing persons, and solve hit and runs, things like that.
Wow.
It was a weird left turn. Yeah. law enforcement. Not what I wasn't expecting, but it was a fun couple years.
How long did you do that work?
2.5 years.
Why leave?
There was a lot of change in the leadership team. The
Hmm.
guy who's still a close friend, he left to go somewhere else. And then at that point, I was working for the CFO, and he left. And it, there's more to it, but that's the easy
Yeah.
answer.
So here you are, learning, adding to your skill set, solving problems. What came next for you?
I went back to food. I so after Flock, I spent a couple months recruiting and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I was being really intentional. I really wanted to go back to restaurant tech. And I looked at some other industries as well. I got really deep in a interview process for a like creator marketing firm. But food tech was really where I wanted to go. And I had worked with OpenTable when I was on corporate development at DoorDash. And I got the confidence to call the CEO who I'd worked with and said, "Hey, who do you like? What do you think about restaurant tech right today? I've been out of it for a couple years. Who should I talk to?" And at the end of that conversation, she was like, "Do you want to come here?" Like, yeah, yes. What do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Do I want to come here? Of course I want. Of course I want to come to a table. And so we created a role for me. Um, and that was a go-to-market strategy. And I brought together three different teams that were under different C-suite members to kind of build a tighter go-to-market motion of product marketing, restaurant marketing, and sales enablement. But there's more to the story, but it was a quick trip. But one of the things that I learned in that, so I left OpenTable last fall. But one of the things I learned en route to that role was how to network and how to find that next thing. Part of that networking, I was talking with a friend who's an executive recruiter, and she was a classmate when I was at McCombs at UT Business School. And I was telling her what I was doing to kind of try to find this job. And she said, "Kate, you're doing it wrong." And I was like, "I'm sorry. What?" She's like, You're recruiting wrong. Like, here's the answers to the test." And the answers to the test was like, what is your marketing plan for yourself? What do you want? And I was like, oh, because I had kind of like a wishy-washy answer. And she was like, no, I'm serious. Like, you need a one pager. What do you want? And so I have one pager that I have never shared, and I'll share it with like 20 people. That is like, at that point, I wanted these three titles, and I articulated the value that I would create. And because it was like COO, VP of go to market, VP of revenue, but I didn't want to do sales. And then underneath that, I described what that meant to me. And then I was agnostic to the industry. No, I was sorry. I wanted restaurant tech or marketplaces or like consumer facing SaaS. And I was agnostic to the company, but I knew like is where I wanted to be. So that when you go talk to somebody in a networking manner, they say, well, what can I help you with? What are you looking for? This is what I'm looking for. And then you're not asking for help. You're asking for advice on how you're going to market with your job search. And that tweak of asking for advice instead of asking for help is now a thing in this iteration, this phase of being a career coach. I preach how to ask for an informational interview or a coffee chat. Know what you want out of that conversation. Ask for advice on how you're approaching your job search. And because you as a person looking for a job, you are a smart human. I don't even know this universal you I'm talking about. I'm just saying you are confident and you're going to have a good conversation. And when you ask for advice and you have a worthwhile conversation, that person is going to offer help. But you haven't asked for it. You ask for their advice. And at worst, somebody like talks about themselves for an hour like we are now. And at best, they offer help.
Why? Why, Kate? Why you here you go, and you're learning all of these things, you're growing, you've developed this one pager
Hmm.
with the titles that you want and with exactly what you're looking for, and you decide to become a career coach.
So I left OpenTable, and OpenTable is a wonderful company. I love the product, love the restaurants, and I will defend it in the marketplace against its peers until the ends of the earth. But I think I'd put this opportunity on a pedestal. And so when I left, I thought, what do you recruit for now? You were at the company in
Yeah.
the role that you wanted. What are you going to do now? And if I look back to like, uh, you know, really to DoorDash, which is honestly my favorite company ever to work for. And I have lots of friends who are still there and are boomeranging back there now. Like it's wonderful. It's tough, but it's wonderful. Um, I love the people and I love managing the people, especially the young people. When I joined DoorDash, I was 31 and I was old lady. I was old lady at 31. It was an average, like significantly, like at like my boss was 28 and he'd like never managed anybody before. He's great, but like it, so I had this opportunity to like manage people that had not really had real career coaching. So I built, some real career coaching chops because these are young people who are smart and talented, but are maybe in the right role for them. Maybe they're not in the right role. And so managing them was not just managing into the next promotion, it was helping them determine what do they want to do with their lives. Do they want to go to a different team to go learn a different skill? Do they want to go to a different company because this pace of work is not for them? And sometimes I manage them. I prioritized helping them even
Mhm.
when it was not in my best interest. And that's what really filled my cup. In parallel, throughout all of these phases, family friends would reach out and say, "Hey, I have a daughter or son and they're going through this hard decision. Can you help them make that decision?" Or they have this advice and they want to go to DoorDash, or they have this and they want to do what. So I've been doing it on the side for free. And in the middle of all this kind of like reflection last fall, had somebody reach out. It was like really like the second person that I had no connection with reach out and say, "Hey, can you help me?" And it was my husband's fishing buddy's daughter. And I took her to dinner and we talked about what she wanted to do, or really more importantly, what she didn't want to do. And I left that I left that dinner and thought, this is it. This is what I love. I should just do this. I should just figure out how to make money doing this. And that was December 3rd. And I'm just like full speed coaching. I have 6 clients. I want more, working on it. I have a presentation this evening at a sorority, helping them, you know, preach the good word about building their careers. But it's really fun.
Kate, thank you for walking us through this because I think what you've shown us is even for somebody who has a very clear idea of the work that they want to do, right? Faced with setbacks and challenges, you were able to adapt. You picked up other work. You tried different things. You weren't above trying anything. It sounds like every opportunity that you were able to take advantage of or to create for yourself, you learned something from that. You were able
Mm-hmm.
to continue to add things to your toolbox, so to speak. Um, and along the way, I think learning more and more about yourself, and as you said, figuring out what it is that fills your cup. So today you're doing the career coaching. It sounds like, well, one, as you said, you're full speed ahead. You've got six clients, and what's next? Continue to build that client list. What do you?
Yeah. I mean, one-on-one coaching, I will always do.
Yeah,
Um, Trying to find ways that are more scalable and economical to help people.
right.
I'm giving a seminar in person on close to campus in West Campus in April for people that are starting their first jobs, kind of the things that career services isn't going to tell you about, like carry a notebook. Here's what a meeting looks like.
Mm.
Here's how to, prepare your wardrobe for an office environment. Like these are so tactical, but really can be scary things as you're trying to, get out the first time. So I'm trying to find scalable ways to help, and then eventually take all of this content from one-on-one coaching and um, productize it, as a tech term, but like, put it online so I can scale it to individuals that maybe can't afford the one-on-one coaching, but still very
Want the
much
services.
deserve to hear the content.
I love that. I love that. That's exciting work, Kate. And I applaud you for this work because I know it's important work, and I think as you said, a lot of folks don't know. I think that's for me, one, I love these conversations, but I especially love sort of the peeling back the layers, right, and seeing, looking behind the curtain, right? Because again, just as you said, this talk that you're going to give, what is it that the career services doesn't tell you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I've had a number of guests who've talked about how the transition from college to the workforce was just as difficult, if not more so, than that transition from high school to college. But nobody ever talks about that.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you.
I have friends that, peers that say, "Oh, these kids, they chewed gum in the interview." I was like, did no one tell them not to?
Yeah.
And like it's a stupid example, but if I can help that, like, it's just help the employer be less frustrated and the student be more, young adult be more confident.
Yeah.
Um, silly, silly, silly errors. Um, I hope that people take away. I mean, I have loved my career, and it is not perfect. It's been hard, and there's been uncertain turns, but you know, I am a strong believer that the only certainty in life is change. And like change is hard, but it doesn't have to be impossible.
Hmm.
And if you're doing something you don't like or doesn't serve you anymore, leave. I mean, like still pay your bills, still pay your rent, still figure out
Yeah.
how to like take care of yourself. But if you're unhappy and it's not filling your cup, or your cup is just like drained on all the sides, change it. Life's too short. Find something that
Hmm.
does fill your cup.
Kate, I hope that one, you'll give me all of your information so that I can share this with my network, but then also some of those events, information about those events, so we can get this episode up before those events, give people some time to learn about it, and hopefully, if they're in the Austin, this will be in Austin, correct?
Yeah, it's at the Texas Women's Federation in West Campus.
Okay.
And it's just an open, I mean, there's like a fee to
Yeah.
attend, but open registration. And if we need to make it bigger, we'll make it bigger.
Well, let's try to make it bigger. So
Yeah.
send me that information so that I can post it. But Kate, before I go, thank you, one, for sharing your story. Thank you for all of the tips and the insight. But as with all of my guests, I always ask, as we head out, what final piece of advice would you like to share with folks?
Mm. You are the best advocate for your life and your career. Trust your gut. Take advice, seek advice from people that you trust and that you feel like are well suited to give you advice, but you don't have to take every piece of advice. You're your own best advocate. It's your career to build, and trust that you'll make a good decision.
Mm, I love that. I love that. Thank you, Kate. Kate,
Yeah.
thank you again for your story. Thank you for your time today. This concludes another episode of the Way to College podcast. Thank you to my guests. Thank you to all of you all out there who are listening and watching. Please remember to subscribe, rate, follow, all of that good stuff. And we'll see you again soon. All right. Bye
Thank,
bye.
thank you.